Hello, I'm here. I've arrived. So, thank you everybody for coming out this morning. Just for a little bit of context, the idea for what's going to be a little series of talks came out of a variety of conversations with Camille and Eric, the owners of HABILE. Eric is the chef. And so the first topic that came to mind was related to food. And obviously, the reason these three individuals were chosen are because I've also had little conversations with each of them about various topics that I think end up overlapping quite naturally. So that's sort of the why. The other thing to think about and why now is, I think, the right time for this is what connects these three and connects Eric and Camille and what they're doing is an emphasis on ethics and transparency and quality and equity. And we're told now we're living in an age that is the end of abundance. I'm sure if anybody is listening to what Maxwell says, we're being told we need to stop. This is obviously a bigger and more debatable topic, but we need to think about how we're consuming. And so, as a sort of timely segue, it felt appropriate. But I also think that what I hear a lot, and what I'm sure these three hear a lot, is that consumers are a bit overwhelmed. They want to do the right thing, they want to make the right choices, but they don't actually necessarily have all the information, or they have mixed messages when it comes to the real cost of things. And so I thought who better to really kind of address these themes than people who work intimately with these, with food and sourcing and products, because they actually know, what things really cost and what's involved and how they can change the way people think about food. So I thought cost would be a good place to start because we're obviously in a period of inflation. Everyone is feeling it in different ways. And you hear things, and I'm sure Samuel, you hear it a lot because he runs. I guess I should give you a quick reminder of who everybody is. So Samuel is the co-founder of Terroir d'Avenir, one of the leading purveyors of fresh produce, meat, cheese, and baked goods. And they started off supplying a lot of very, very big chefs in Paris 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now obviously they have several locations.
He was the first one to put together that kind of product.
Right, to have a shop that really was of high quality.
I mean, you need the first one in time, and he maybe be the best now, but he's not the first.
And so now they've got shops on Rue Lille, Rue Colbert, and Rue Jean-Pierre-Timbaud, and they're at the marché, this big market at La Félicité, which is in the Marais. If you haven't been, you really need to see it. It's massive and exceptional. Camille is the chef owner of Nonette and The Hood, which is both across the street from one another. She's an extremely talented chef, and I think we're lucky to have her in the etablissement. And Sarah is the creator of Kaya, her family-run estate olive oil company, which she's revived, and she has just started to distribute the olive oil in Paris and in other places. It's also available in some shops in the U.S. and in Lebanon too, right?
No, in the UAE.
In the UAE, okay. So each of these people bring a very specific expertise and understanding of product. So back to cost. So we're in a period of inflation. Everything appears to people to be hors de prix. How do you address this, right? Because people will go into Terroir d'Avenir and say, I'd like to shop there. The products are really great, but everything is overpriced. The word overpriced gets thrown around constantly. So what does it really mean? What is really behind these ideas and the idea of cost and value?
Yes. Actually, the question of price of price is always you have to think it in a reference. What do you compare the price to? If you compare actually tomato we sell with some tomato coming from I don't know where grown I don't know how and shipped I don't know how either. Obviously, it would be more expensive, and it is our price. When you focus differently on the product, and when you wonder how this product is made, what is the seed at the beginning, what the impact on the soil, what is the impact on my health, we are very cheap. This can be shocking sometimes because I know it's when you the value as itself can be very expensive because when you compare to industrial products, of course, it's more expensive. But when you put in the balance all the other items, such as the health, such as the impact, and everything, we're not expensive. So it's a lot of questions to be changed. And I think the answer is not only just checking the price as itself, but release it.
Well, why do you think people have this difficulty of considering what else goes into that product? You were mentioning just before someone who said a croissant was expensive. A croissant at €1.20 is expensive, but they're not considering the manpower that goes into that, the butter, the quality of the ingredients. Why is it that people have this block? Because I think a lot of us might associate France with being a culture where people go to the market, they see the people in some cases who have come from their farms and producer kind of markets, and yet at the same time they're quick to say, "I don't see bullshit." So where is the disconnect happening?
I think the disconnection comes from mainly the evolution of consumption. Because 60, 70 years ago, the food was almost 30% of the incomes of the family, the households, where it was dedicated to food. Now it's between 6 and 10% of the family of the households. So it's way different. People are
in terms of their expenses.
Yes. People are willing to pay for iPhone, for TV, which is never very expensive, but to buy carrots, to buy food, to buy whatever, it is too expensive. That's the first comparison. And the second one is education. When you buy a product, you don't when you check when you disclose the price of the product, you just don't buy the product. You buy stuff, and this is a lot. It is very important. The raw materials are also very, very important. If you go like the price of the croissant, I discussed with someone yesterday who told me the croissant, when you pay the croissant €1.20, it's very expensive. When we started the bakery in 2015, so which is 6 years ago, it's not that far, we paid the butter €10 per kilo. Today, it's more than €80 per kilo.
80?
18, sorry.
18. Okay.
Excuse me.
The inflation go quicker with you.
It's golden it's €18 per kilo, so it's almost double. The wheat is also the same. And when we try to find stuff, and it's really concerned for the restaurants, for every craft store, it's always the same. If you want to have good staff who is involved, to understand what you do, with respecting the quality of the product, with very engaged involved in the project, you have to pay them well. So obviously it's very expensive. And obviously when you compare industrial croissant, which is made in machine with no cell, no nothing, and when you compare it to a croissant made with hands, with people who wake up very early in the morning, you cannot compete. You can. Oh, yeah, when we sell €1.20, and when you buy industrial croissant 80 cents, the difference is not enough. And I think people are not willing to understand all these costs, which are.
Well, I think one thing you touched on that I I experienced again last week was I went to a coffee shop, and these women who were dressed head to toe, designer, very, very affluent, at least in appearance. Obviously, I given them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, and they said, let's go in here and see what the cost of the espresso is, so we can have a laugh, because they were basically laughing at what for them seemed too expensive. And I just thought it was, a prime example of people who are prepared. It's just what you want to spend your money on. You won't spend your money on clothing and travel and whatnot, but a better coffee where people are paid properly is just, they're missing a whole part of the lesson. So Kennedy, I know you face this too with Nonette, but maybe perhaps even with the Hood. What do you think people are missing most? And are they receptive to the idea of, this is what's involved in the cost, or do they just put up barriers?
So with the first location, the Hood has been open since 2016. Of course, every year I kind of have those reminders of how people react to the pricing we put forward. The thing is that as a restaurant, we always have the prices available for people to see. So once you've consumed and you're about to pay, to me, it's a bit unsettling to have a remark about the prices. We never lie about what's there. It's quite obvious. You have all the tools. And this is your choice to come within the shop and to have a good moment with us. If you regret, of course, I'm sorry, but I wasn't dishonest about the way that we proceeded, because it's quite obvious. Recently, actually, last week, I was sitting down in the restaurant, which doesn't happen a lot, and I had customers next to me talking about the food. Obviously, I didn't notice that I was behind the bar just right before, but it's okay. It's always interesting to hear what people say about the location and how they would perceive it. So we currently do these nights with seafood and fish, which is one of the most expensive goods as a protein, animal protein. And they paid about €45 each. And they had a whole stingray, mussels, a lot of fresh seafood that comes from France, and it's delivered every 2 days. Every day. It's really fresh, and we work everything up in-house. We make all our sauces from scratch. So I was a bit perplexed, because when they left, we asked if everything was okay, and they just said, yes, amazing. And I was outside. I wasn't stalking them, obviously. But it happened that I was outside when they left, and they said, but not really good though. So I was really wondering, why didn't they tell us immediately? Because we are building our business with the customers. We don't exist without the customers. If we don't have the real feedback or the real, interaction, there's no point. So I think there's a lot of things that happen throughout the years, and because people expect from Asian food, so both our places are very Asian food, but I come from a traditional education in food. I converted in 2015, and I did barbecue right after. So my rules of cooking is more gastronomical. That's why we decided to do everything in-house, and it was really important to us. We really source our products, so Bruce Simon is one of our suppliers for our poultry. It's important for us to also re-educate people about what Asian food is, because there's an expectation. And it's the same as Sam, and he touched base on a lot of really good points, is that people compare us to other neighborhoods and other places that are not doing the same product. They may be using the same culture, and they may use the same dishes, but we don't work it the same way. So if you compare us to a banh mi we do banh mi in Nonette, the banh mi that's €4 in Belleville or in Pontet or in the 13th, sorry, not dropping names, but it's part of the shops. Of course, if you compare us to a product that does industrial meats, industrial bread, everything industrial, well, it's different prices, of course, and they have different volumes that they've been there for so many years. But us, we do all our cold cuts in-house, we do all our sauces. The only products we don't make are the butter and the bread. So, and the coriander, of course. We don't do our coriander. Hopefully never. It's too much work. So it's really, as you said, referencing to the right product, actually. You wouldn't compare McDonald's with a burger shop that you like, with good patties. So it's a bit, at the beginning, I was really affected by all the feedback for the prices, because it's one of the industries that you do less margins. it's not an industry that you become a rock star and you're very rich the next day. We are food makers. It's F&B.
Should have told me that before. Struggling for 20 years for no reason.
Exactly. People think we make so much money out of cooking, but
Is there a food business where you do get high margins? Pizza, people think about pizza being the highest margin
there are
product.
different bases. It also depends on your business model. So it's not only the concept and the product, it's also how you drive your business. And there are some businesses that are more thriving than others by the definition of how they're doing and how they want to do it. I could have done things differently, I could have not made the sauces myself. I could have, not bothered. But I think that's what we wanted to do. And to receive sometimes reception that is like, oh, why are you pricing €6 a sandwich with cold cuts that are in-house? And I'm like, oh, are you comparing this to a ham and butter from a bakery? That's most of the time not great and cold and not done by the minute. So it's more, how to say,
But you actually you're not always the one serving them. So is the staff,
explaining.
yeah, do they explain? Do they take that time? What are the guidelines to address that feedback? Because I think the problem also is that if consumers just go off and they're like, well, I said it was too expensive and that was bad and nothing, they're not being challenged. And I know it's delicate, right? Because, as a consumer, you don't necessarily want someone to yell at you every time you go eat. But at some point, the education has to come in somewhere, right?
Yeah, so it happened a couple of times when I was there, when I wasn't there, that I had this feedback from the team, even though they explained, they were like, oh, yeah, but I better do one. That's €4. But then, it's okay. We're not our customer. It's okay. But then, again, with nobody's forced, we don't take anyone's hands to just, come and eat at our place. We don't do that, of course, and it's not allowed anyway. But, it's more that, I think when you're about to pay and then you're complaining about the price that happened, it was there for you to see.
Right.
And I think it's about for the customer, as a chef, as well as a restaurateur, as a business owner, when I go to some place, I won't be, even though sometimes, my friends want to go to some random brasserie and I'm not really want to do that, but I'll go. I'm not expecting it to be something different.
Right.
I'm not going to be like, but they don't have this great meat, whatever. No. This is what they are doing. If you're going there willingly, just handle it, just handle it for yourself and don't put your lash and shit to the owner.
Well, I do have another question related to what you just said, but I want to talk to Sarah about this too, because I think the same goes with people's perception, right? There's a question of perception involved in certain types of cuisines and then also products. So you're working with your French Tunisian, you are working in a business that actually is extremely sort of a major actor. Tunisia competitive, but also Tunisia, whether people realize it or not, is a major actor in the olive oil business. They're the third biggest producers of olive oil, and yet no one seems to know that. What is happening there when we talk about cost and perception in that particular industry?
Sure. Well, the system as we know it, and the system in which Tunisian olive oil has existed until now, as we mentioned, is unfair because it is solely based on profit, exploitation, and lack of transparency. So Tunisia is the third largest producer of olive oil in the world. The reason why people don't know this is because most industrial corporations profit out of Tunisia's weaker and cheaper economy to buy it there at a cheap price and resell it under supermarket labels mixed with other olive oils, whether it's other Tunisian olive oils or just other European olive oils. It's just blended and resold without any mention of exportation. So it is a product that erases origin and provenance, so terroir, and obviously exploits the people, and the people of color who basically make it happen and produce it. So the way that we want to do things is obviously the total opposite. It's just a system that reflects the world that we are trying to build, so a world that is more fair, more delicious, that redefines what food systems can be, that redefines what businesses should be, and how things should taste like as well.
But also, once people like you in Tunisia. So not only you, there are some others who have tried to elevate the reputation of Tunisian olive oil because it deserves to be spotlighted. It's actually won awards, and even blind tests. It's winning, in terms of flavor profile, and so it's sort of like, well, yeah, if you keep sort of squashing it or putting it in this bucket of, well, it is only a product that gets woven into big sort of industrial olive oils, and it's because the labor is cheap or it's easy to exploit people, then it doesn't really get its chance to shine as its own heritage product. Do you feel like there's still this tension between needing to being perceived as a low cost place to produce, but also being super artisanal and being able to produce quality?
Yeah. I think just to before I reply, there's obviously an inequality in the way we perceive origin. So this is something I've mentioned in another conversation recently. But people are very easily know how to find an origin when it comes to Europe, and they're very specific, even with regions. So it's easy for us to say this is from Provence, this is from Tuscany, this is from Catalonia. But when it comes to countries in the south, it's not only Tunisia, it could be Vietnam, it could be Colombia, it could be whatever. We just know that it's roughly Tunisia, maybe North African, we don't even know. And that, I think, proves that even if it's not something people realize, but in the way we perceive other countries, there are a colonial legacy in our perception. And so, I'm trying to change that. Now, in my own experience, I think, I don't know if I've been lucky or if people appreciate my product, but I think because it's so attached to my roots and it's so specific to me, I was able to tell a story that is so personal and sincere that people get it. And I think this is what helps me build that connection with the people here. They know that there's a face behind it.
And a family, right?
Yeah,
a family legacy.
That, real sense.
So, I mean, you're working with olive groves that have been around for thousands of years.
No, not mine. But having said that, yes.
There are 2,000-year-old.
Yeah, like some people when you say olive oil, people will rightly think of it's now maybe trees, which is great. But in fact, the first trees emerged in the Levant, maybe Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, we're not so sure, but probably around there. Then they came to Tunisia. They were cultivated in Tunisia because Phoenicians came to Tunisia 3,000 years ago. So our trees have been there 3,000 years ago. And like Carthage is a city that's older than Rome, for example. So some people forget that we are deeply rooted in this culture as well, and it's part of who we are as well. And we deserve to take part in this conversation with you in a reciprocal way.
Well, and so what you're essentially talking about also with the success of what you're doing is a question of authenticity. I mean, that word is very is a loaded word, right? But in essence, people are more likely to maybe latch on and give people the chance when you have a legitimate story and claim to a place to talk about. This leads me back to Camille, something that we've talked about a lot, is people's perception of Asian food, right? And this goes back to colonialism, but also goes back to, and it's not just in France, the US, there have been similar issues, sort of discriminatory remarks from consumers related to what they think the price of Asian cuisine, how it should be priced. So where is this coming from? This, like, why is it that someone will say to you, oh, a 6 or 8 euro banh mi is not worth it, but I'm willing to pay 15 euros for a burger around the corner, right? There's something Americanized food is okay, but what's happening here?
So it's interesting actually because a couple of things that Sarah said was really affecting me the way, because it's a lot of common things. I want to focus on one part of the banh mi, for example, the bread. So this dish was created because we had flours imported from Europe because under the French colonialism. So it's by definition a mixed rice dish. We don't have wheat in Asia. Obviously, we have rice. It's not our main cereal, so there's no place in how we do flour. It's obviously coming from abroad, and when I had people coming to me and asking me, "Oh, but why don't you use sourdough or tradition?" Over in France, we have good bread here. You can use that. No. So normally, it's not done this way. It's if I'm asking you, why don't you do your blanquette with I don't know, fish, because it's not the recipe, right? So it's not the recipe. And I'm half Lebanese, I'm French. I was born in France, but both my parents are Lebanese, and my grandfather on my dad's side is French. So I grew up like this. I grew up in the Loire Valley, but with Vietnamese products, and my parents always eat Vietnamese food. I've been there a lot for my work, and so I know the country. I'm willing to accept criticism, and of course, it's always building up to better good in the future. But I'm not willing for you to question my legitimacy, because this is what it's triggering for me here. Is that okay? You've been to Vietnam, that's good, and I love people coming to our country. That's what that's traveling is about, But you cannot know it better than me. And if I decide to do it this way, it has meaning. Why? So why do we use this white bread that's sometimes frozen that we had in the canteen when we were as a kid, as French people? The one that we didn't really like, that got very hard after a couple of time, Why did we decide to have this bread? It's because it's the best bread for this dish. If you do a tradition, if you do a sourdough, it's too dense. The sourdough is very moist, it's very gray, it has this long acidity in the flavor. And we worked so hard on the garnishes, and it's a building. There's a fat layer, then there's a couple of protein, and we decide to season in a certain way. There's pickles as well with daikon and carrots, cucumber and coriander. So this sandwich on its own has, 8 to 7 different layers of product. And if you were using another bread that's more dense, that's more humid, that's more moist and more acidic, it wouldn't be the same. We've tried. Of course, I did try in French as well. So I did try different products to see, And whenever we were eating it, all the garnishes were squeezed out because it was so dense. And then I couldn't finish in the oven because it's not adapted for the sandwich that we do in Vietnam. Maybe it's perfect for ham and butter, but not for us. So it's been 6 years of that.
You mean 6 years of hearing this?
And hearing it and explaining. And at some point, you don't get affected anymore. You just decide to move on. And we opened the banh mi shop. So we used to sell this at the hood, and we opened the banh mi shop, only banh mi, in 2021. So it's the first location that I decide to do everything. It's my first full concept. And it wasn't that hard because it's a takeaway stand, I know the products. I would kind of have lean operations compared to sitting dining. But the hardest part for me was to put a price on my product. Because normally we have rules about how we price things. We have coefficient, okay, this is my margin. This is what's going to make me pay my bills and maybe pay myself, hopefully. And then people were just telling me, oh, you have such a premium product, It's €6 my sandwich. Is it supposed to be premium? Is it what we can expect as people of color to be premium because you pay €6? And I compare it to a lot of places around me. Of course, we always benchmark as business owners. And a Lebanese place can price €12. And you compare the technique and the food price, it's pretty much the same. So what's the difference here? It's because we are used to have immigration waves coming in the 90s and the 70s and all these years. And you used to pay this price. I think it's the same for the croissant. You add the baguette. You were used to pay, 70 cents for a baguette back in those days. I think it's supposed to be the same price. But it's not supposed to be the same because I pay the same wages. I pay the same taxes. I pay the same charges. It's not because I'm Asian or I'm a person of color that I don't have the same,
Expenses.
Merci. I was like, would not stop happening. And we have the same expenses. So I think, in matters of representing the brand and the concept, I had a very hard time.
Sure. Well, and it just seems like it almost seems like there's no clear end to these discussions because every time you think you sort of shared the gospel with the right people. You get another wave of people who are like, mais pourquoi c'est si cher? Pourquoi c'est ça? And it's sort of like, it can't just be from you, right? Like education has to start somewhere else. Sarah, what has been the reception to your olive oil when you've had it tried in Paris?
I'm so ingrained in those stigma. It was like, I feel like people might put my olive oil in like a bled type of box, like l'huile d'olive, l'or africaine, as if it's like inferior. And I came with that like idea myself, just to show you how much again. Yeah.
Well, but didn't you say that that's because of like a cultural way you internalize that treatment?
I think. And also because there isn't much Tunisian olive oil, the premium from Tunisia that you can buy here. And so I felt maybe people are going to be, they're going to have their
hesitation.
I think there is benefit at listening people, because I mostly put myself on front and speaking. I'm going to put something in the air and I want you to react. All three of you put out like, we're struggling to create value out of a really, really higher and better product. Like, carrot cannot be compared to another carrot. Two industries succeed in that pretty well in the past 40 years. If you buy a Rolex, it's exactly a fucking Seiko or fucking Swatch. It gets the same movement, the same weight, the same material, but Rolex spends so much energy on creating value out of the same thing that now when you see someone with a Rolex, you think it's expensive. And you want to save money to buy that Rolex. And that's the same with a Gucci bag or what's so Hermes bag, even more expensive. Like the leather, like everything should cost 50,000 euros. But everyone in the world want to fight to get that bag because they create value. I'm not saying it's not worth it, but that's exactly the job we need to do. It's not about the banh mi. It's not about the market. I think chefs and food industry past the same 40 years creating the way to be a rock star was to be on TV or high volume. Like you're not on TV and you're not doing high volume. You fucked. Like Rolex is not on TV.
She was on TV.
Hermes is not on TV. Oh, I mean, you should get more money out of it. You should. But I think we need to find a way to create some value on the end product. The difficulty is you get a Rolex or two per life, and most of the Rolex owners get one. Some collecting them, but I don't think it's a big part of the market. We're eating every day, so it means €2 every day. On your cookie, on your coffee, take your Rolex apart, and it's nice to show the Rolex, maybe. But I think we need to find ways to explain, like the banh mi can be expensive. We need to explain, like a carrot is not a carrot. You can get like a 40 cents per kilogram carrots and €4 per kilo carrots. A croissant can cost down to 5 to 6 cents if you buy them frozen, industrial prime cost. So if you want to make money out of croissant, you can.
Sure.
So
But how do you do that? Because it seems like,
well, you get the machine, you get the cheapest material. I mean, taking the price down, it's pretty
So
easy.
really what you're saying is people in school need to be learning this, and then at home we need some sort of like, I don't know, training program for people to know what things really cost.
I don't know if it's political, educational, but I think if we want to keep our job going that direction, that's not an option anymore. We need to tell people, not even the recipe and the white bread, it's like the cost. The cost is not the same. We're not doing the same thing. They both look the same, because the banh mi, next to another banh mi, you will get the carrot and the coriander and the chicken, but like one chicken life doesn't mean it's the same other chicken life. And the cost on the environment, because you tell me the cost like can be on a cheap product can be higher on the long term. So I don't know if it should be, you should charge a tax on people fucking up the soil on the long term. No, because like producing cheap potato, for example, is like have an impact on the soil, and the soil won't produce anything 20 years ago. So that will be at the cost of someone at some point.
Well, here, to your point about education, this leads me into my next question, which was about people have really latched onto the idea of organic, right? So there was certain in the media, in books, there's been a lot there's a lot of access to information regarding organic, what's healthy, how do we consume in a healthier way? But then the narrative sort of shifts, and now it's the local's actually better than organic. And so I think that what happens when you're starting to educate consumers is that you push one idea for a long time, and then someone will come along and say, wait, actually, and then there's sort of an alternative story, and then people get confused, and they're not sure how to make the right choices. So in this particular case, especially since you work with a lot of producers, or a lot of growers who are local, how do you tackle the invariable question of, well, is it organic? And what's actually better?
Sorry, question. When we started 15 years ago, organic was regarded as something, kind of like the Middle East, North Africa for the world. It was like only for people from the 60s, marginal people, and people were not willing to buy organic food. Nobody cared. 15 years ago, nobody cared about organic products. What happened during 15 years ago? We had a crisis, such as crazy cow.
Oh, mad cow.
Mad
Right.
cow, sorry. I don't know.
I like crazy cow.
Yes, you had several crises like this, and people started to sing and just challenging just how they feel, how they feel. What should I put in my mouth? What should I buy? What should I buy? Sorry. And a lot of media, of communication pop up around organic products, and retailers, just Carrefour and everything, started to have the size of the organic shelf went from just 1 meter to a full shelf in the retail. So all the industrial brands started to turn organic. With obviously the cotton for the veg, and everybody had to be organic to sell products. Now the conclusion 50 years later is that actually to me the organic level has really going down compared to what it was 50 years ago, because now the standards are way lower and exigence and everything is well out. So it's kind of a shame, but on the other hand, it's also good that this standard organic is lower than it was, but it's upper than the industrial product that were bought 15 years ago. So the soil is kind of saved. It's less killed. So it's also another way of saving the product. And organic, I think now, is more about a reference for people who don't really know the earth, who don't really know how to buy. So they don't really know. And organic is kind of, okay, it's cool, it's safe. I know that when I buy organic, I buy healthy food, which is way different from a local food. To me, actually, it's for people who are involved, who are committed to. It's like kind of a philosophy. When you want to buy local, you don't only look for a label. You look for something much cheaper. You want also to work to lower the impact you can have on transport. The lower you want to help or to save farmers who are close to you, so people who pay tax in your country. It's also something very, very important. We don't mention it before, but again, when you compare the prices, if you compare the prices with tomato grown in France, close, like grown local, and when you compare it to tomato grown in even the south of Spain, the workers who are growing the tomato are way different. In France, you all know it, we have full security, everybody's paid because it's declared, so we pay a lot of taxes, and which is very good, compared to Spain, where people are illegal workers, they work 70, 80 years per week. They don't have any social coverage. So the way of buying local food is also, it's not only a philosophy of just I want to buy something close. It's also a deep commitment, I think, of what I want to buy, what I want to prepare, and which impact I want to have on what's surrounding.
Well, and also there are winemakers and growers who deliberately choose not to get organic certification because it's not black and white in terms of what that implies. It means often in produce, it can mean that a parcel is organic and then right next door is something full of pesticides. So that's not always clear to the consumer either. And so they're just, okay, organic has been told, I've been told this is better. That's the easy path to follow. Yeah, now it seems like, again, sort of like when we were told that butter was bad and now everyone's like, no, wait, no, butter's not the problem, it's sugar. That anytime you have these sort of like conflicting or complicated stories, consumers are like, wait, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. So I think that's very interesting when you're differentiating between the two. Because I'm mindful of everyone's time, I do want to ask you guys something else, which is about Paris. We're in Paris. The food scene has evolved tremendously in terms of the types of cuisines we have access to, in terms of the types of products that are available to us today. What are some of the positive shifts in behavior that you've seen in the last, 5 to 10 years? And what do you think still needs to change?
Visiting each other.
And whoever wants to start.
I was gonna say, coming back to the question you asked me before, and I couldn't go reply till the end. I had obviously my own doubts before launching, and I realized people were very positive about my product. So now I sell it in shops and work with chefs, and people appreciate the product because I think they appreciate, of course, the ethics behind it, but also the feedback. So this is great. Now, what I think is positive is that Paris is becoming more diverse in what we eat and the people who are behind what we eat, and that's amazing. But I think that some products are still divorced from their cultural context.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of harissa, za'atar, shakshuka, all of those things everywhere. And I'm happy about it. But sometimes I'm like when you said about the recipe, this is not the recipe. So it's great. But I'd love to have, I love Kamel Noirs from Taouret.
Yeah.
He's a guy who
You all know Taouret, and Kamal who has Souk El Tayeb in Beirut, and is sort of the slow food visionary in Lebanon, and has opened a restaurant in Paris in January in the 11th arrondissement.
Yeah. And so when it comes to Tunisian food, funnily enough, I feel like it's becoming trendy that there's a lot of Tunisian stuff happening recently I've seen, but none of it really tastes like home to me. So I love to have to see a Tunisian salad emerge, or I don't know if you can say the same thing about but I feel like we need more stuff made by the people who understand the culture.
But
it's already better.
But doesn't it? Some people. I mean, you could argue that there are people who understand the culture, but then dumb down, or adapt too heavily for the local market because they assume that it won't be an easy enough sell.
I don't think so. Maybe it's my own preference, but I like when things taste hearty and spicy and aromatic. That's what I like in food. And I think people are curious. When you like food, you want to taste things. I think. I don't know.
I think it's good and bad that we have places that, as you say, dumb it down, but at least it's out there. There's a good because people are aware of the product and aware of the culture that's highlighted, which is good because we need to know about it. And the bad part is that you'd rather do it the proper way and people can see how it is supposed to be like. Why? Because then you end up having those remarks again about, it's not supposed to be spicy. it's not supposed to be shrimpy and fermented and da da da. You know, but it's actually the way it is. But then it becomes authentic to you because this is how you had it in the restaurant. So it becomes a reference. And it's what happened for all the past years I'm a daughter of immigrant, of course. So I've seen all those families opening restaurants. Even my parents had these restaurants with a very long menu, and there was X's and 18s everywhere, you know, for naming the dishes. So I know that we were born in that culture as well. We were used to have this reception of Asian food, and I'm talking, of course, about other cultures, but this is the one I know better. And to this day, it's not obvious anymore. People know this is not good anymore. I mean, it's not as good as it can be.
Right.
But there's another step of evolution.
Just what I've noticed during the 15 years last year, it's really when this strategy. When we started 15 years ago, all the dishes had to be like parallel and perpendicular, and everything. The dishes had to be graphic. Nobody cared about what was inside the plate, and the main shift to me was like from schools like Passar, Barbeau, and everything. We shifted completely drastically. They put the vegetables inside, just in the middle of the plate. It was not just the side; it was really in the middle of the plate. And the product as itself became the whole dish. It was not like just all the recipe by itself, but the product became a dish by itself. I think it was the main shift, as Paris is one of the biggest city in the world. This led to a real revolution in the world, and it can be part of this evolution.
Well, and a lot of times you go to a restaurant now and on the menu, it'll say cheese from this place, the beef is sourced from this place, as a way, and now, 10 years ago that was not done. And I think it was also the neo-bistro boom that really brought that to the forefront as well. And I don't know that maybe every consumer understands what they're reading, but maybe somewhere they start to understand that, it has a source. Do you think that there's a way that you see a future where people are, more connected to or less detached from the sources of their food? Because this is talked about a lot. People who change careers to be closer to the land and do things with their hands. But I'm wondering if it's really just a drop in the bucket and very niche, or if we can imagine a time when consumers also won't put up with, with being so far removed from the people and the places that bring their food.
Well, I'm going to bounce back on what Eric said. He compared the luxury industry to the food industry. And you said that as well when you went to the coffee shop and people were designer stuff and everything. And I think it's also related to how people would consume and consumerism on its own. Is that if you own a piece, if you own something, it has more value than your own body. Because in the end, food comes into your body, it comes inside of you. So it's interesting the gap between how you can price something that you own and you can show off, and that's defining you in a way, because it's a product that expresses what you're supposed to be to other people. Well, nothing else can express who you are apart from your body. It goes inside of you. So why would you spare spending money on this?
I think you just nailed it. I don't know what else to add. I think you you captured something. Although you could argue that people who do like to shop in certain places, it's because they like to be seen shopping in those places. But ultimately, you're right. At the end of the day, it's what goes inside of you, and so therefore it should matter. But there are other things at play, right? Like that's a deep psychological and existential discussion maybe to have. But I think you nailed something. Can you see a time where, in the 15 years you've been doing this, people seem to care, at least your consumer seems to care more about it?
I think, when I compare, when we opened the fishmonger, it was the main impact. When people came in the fishmonger at the beginning, They all asked for salmon, sea bass, shrimp. That's it. We didn't sell any of these products because we only sell French local products. Actually, we sell sea bass, but we don't sell salmon. We don't sell shrimp because it comes from Mozambique, and we don't know how it's going. But we sold chanchar.
We know.
But
we know how it's growing in Mozambique.
yeah, but you do. But consumer didn't know.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, people came and they just turned around and left. And so we tried to educate a lot, just to sensibilize, just to tell them you should try this product. And the biggest effort we have to do is about education, and our staff is really retrained just to explain to the consumer all the difference with the products we sell. So they gave some recipes to try Maxwell, to try chanchar, to try Admiral, and people came up. They tried, they liked it, and now it's actually the biggest we want, because when people enter in the fishing gear now, they don't ask for a product, they ask what do we have, what will we have today. And so the offer and demand system has changed, and this was our goal. Now I think the biggest impact will be when consumer will adapt, will adjust to the products and not the reverse. We as consumer have to adapt. We don't know when is the best season.
We should.
We should know,
Most people don't.
but more people don't know when is the best season to buy this and best invest. We don't know which is the kind of fish we can catch today or so we need some very good stuff to do it. We need some very committed people to explain it, and I think all the huge stuff we have to do that.
Well, I think the thing to take away is perhaps that there are changes being made, and although it can feel like nothing is moving, if you zoom out a bit, there are actual changes happening. But it's also thanks to people like you who are making a change, and thankfully we have platforms like social media, for better or for worse, but that allow you also to get some of these messages out. Thank you so much for these insights. Eric, thank you for also jumping in and discussion. I feel like if maybe we have a moment to take some questions if anybody has. I know it's early, but maybe things going on. Anything you want to know, anything you want clarified?
This is a city that has a lot of tourists, and so I think that's the French food culture is deeply ingrained. I think with French consumers, and of course they experience all of the challenges that you're talking about too. But then you have like Americans coming who are coming from a completely different food culture that values food totally differently and probably less than French consumers do.